agenda will fight to increase pay and opportunities for women in the workforce. Support women entrepreneurs. Who's a women entrepreneur here? Who's a women? A lot of them. Hate to tell you, men, generally speaking, they're better than you are. No one has benefited more from our thriving economy than women, who have filled 58% of the newly created jobs last year.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
You're not even the full species. Women are.
I'm sorry I'm male. Why? Why am I a monster?
You won't hear one word from the fake feminist about this, because they tell women they love them because they want to control them and keep them on that reservation real close to them so they can destroy you. The truth is, women, out of their mitochondrial DNA, they now have proven this, will release new genetics, which are actually old genetics, for key times, and will decide the sex at the embryonic level and what to activate in the male that's going to be created, that comes out of the woman, out of the earth, out of God's creation. How magic is that to defend women? Men are a weapon of women. Men are here to serve women. Men are here to die and build for women. Men are nothing but the entire defense mechanism of, not just in mammals, but in all major species.
Of course!
And there are some roles in some species where the women act as defenders as well. The point is, the idea that men and women are in competition is a sick joke. And the fact that men treat women bad and don't know how to get women's affection shows how stunted and destroyed they with you. I'm kind of retarded in that.
Men look at things in terms of cost analysis, and the penalties for marriage are so high and the rewards now are so low. First of all, there's legal costs of marriage. There are so many men now who are just saying, you know what, it's just not worth it to me. I'm going to be stuck paying the alimony. I'm going to be stuck paying for child support. And it's not just legal reasons. It's also psychological ones where men feel that basically they don't really have rights in marriage. Women hold all the cards now in reproduction and all kinds of things, and men don't.
Well, that's all true. I mean, I agree with that completely. But it still doesn't absolve men of the responsibility to stop complaining about how the cards are against them and man up and become men, because you don't become a man until you assume responsibility.
What man would take such a raw deal? I don't consider that a man.
Well, it's not a raw deal. You derive deep satisfaction as a man by taking responsibility for other people. That's the only place you get deep satisfaction.
So men are supposed to take a really bad deal and sign their rights away, and you call that a good deal?
I don't like to do segments on it, but I also think it's really important because I think it's so horrifying that something like this is perpetrated on young girls, as the father of young girls.
Right.
Would you concede, because there are a lot of women who feel mutilated by this, this is not, this is being led by women.
Sure.
that maybe we should let adults make this decision and not impose it on 6-year-olds. Is that fair?
Well, here's what I think about it. There are a lot of men, right, who have experienced male circumcision, who say that this is mutilation. In fact, in the courtroom, when Dr. Nargawala appeared in court, there were protesters outside. But they weren't anti-FGM
But that's not an
protesters.
argument for female circumcision.
No, what I'm saying is, you're saying to me that there are opponents to female circumcision.
Look, as you know, there's a lot of research. I don't want to get into the circumcision debate on men, but there's research. Okay, well then there's research that shows there are profound medical advantages in that. There is no research that shows there's any medical advantage to female genital mutilation.
First of all, that research is contested. There's a lot of research out there that says, yes, there is harm, there is risk.
Look,
there are over 100
that's a separate show.
deaths each year from
that's
male
a separate show, and I'm open-minded. But what you're doing is not making.
You're saying we're abusing girls.
But that's like saying, you know, we can't ban weed because beer is legal.
No, but listen, you
arguments.
are accepting that it is okay to perform a much more intensive or invasive procedure on boys.
I don't know that I'm accepting that. I'm just saying that this is bad to do to little girls.
I disagree. I think if we accept it in American society that we do remove, or we do remove the foreskin on boys, we do practice genital cutting here in the U.S. on boys, then it should not be impossible to understand that there are cultures, there are societies that practice what certain people are now calling gender-inclusive
I just don't want it in my culture, in my society. I guess that's kind of what it comes down to.
So it's okay to cut boys in your
I'm not
society?
saying, look, I'm just saying I don't want this, because I think it's awful.
Well, we don't, in our culture, we don't discriminate. We have gender egalitarian surgeries. We do not discriminate. We don't discriminate.
We're out of time. I feel like we can finish the hour. I'd probably die of embarrassment by then, but thank you very much for coming out with that perspective.
If you were a real feminist, you would support housewives and see them as the heroes.
The sacred femininity.
That's one of the only things I like about her. If your husband cheats on you with such regularity as Bill Clinton does, you should smack him around a little bit. And the fact that we have Bill Clinton with big sunglasses saying, "Oh, sorry, I bumped into the cupboard. That was embarrassing. I'm such a klutz." Taking the woman's role in the relationship is one of the only cases of domestic abuse that I consider acceptable.
Teacher in Florida, Jennifer Fitcher, just got 22 years for raping 3 high school boys that were 17. The mother in the case talked about how she could see her son losing her son. He was changing before her very eyes. And it reminds me of, you know, all these other cases where we talk about the horrific violation of innocence that happens with young girls. And then they just flip it over to boys. And you go, I remember being 17. We were so obsessed with tits. It was like being haunted by a tit ghost. It was always just, I remember praying to God saying, please make me think about sex less. Please, I want to have a normal life. And this woman gets 22 years for that? Now, she should have been fired. And I got it. If I was her dad, dad of one of these boys, I don't know. I might be mad. I feel like I would want to high five the other dads. I'm sorry for having that feeling, but if it was young girls, I would want to murder the teacher with my bare hands. But when I think of the roles reversed, I don't feel this. I feel more of a this shape. And the same with Galen Boffman. I wouldn't be dancing in the streets if my gay son was with a 19-year-old. I'd want to beat the guy up, maybe hospitalize him. And I've said this to Galen, and he sort of goes, well, beats 9 years.
A 15-year-old boy is not a 15-year-old girl.
I noticed this, by the way, on Fox when you're on Outnumbered, and you said something incredibly controversial, which is it's different for a 16-year-old boy to get raped, air quotes, by a hot teacher in lingerie than it is for some disgusting old 40-year-old man to fuck a 16-year-old student.
You think?
You think?
Yeah. It's not even in the same universe, actually.
And the reality is that the outcomes on these young males are not good. Now, we don't really know, is it the fact that they were sexually abused that make the outcomes no good, or are these women picking males that are at risk? This kid, he did have some criminal, was arrested in July for some criminal damage. He was, when he was picked out by this devious woman, you know, I guess, should we say allegedly? I can't say allegedly because we know there's a baby. When she picked out this kid, his mom had just died, if I remember right. Is that the history?
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, Evie, this woman really is something, isn't she?
Yes, that's why I'm just looking at this mother, and if I were him, I would get a lawyer and I would do everything I could to get something on this woman. This is so inappropriate and so wrong. This is where you see the law being twisted, and the offender, the bad guy, is getting away with it. And these are one of those times where the legislation is just not working right.
So I will say it again, that these boys end up having bad outcomes. There's a lot of aggression and criminality and whatnot later. And we don't know, is it the result of being sexually abused or that these women have picked guys that are at risk? Either way, it doesn't make them better, that's for sure, and the outcomes are not good. So those of you that feel that, oh, we shouldn't feel too terrible for this 15-year-old boy, yeah, think again. It does traumatize him. It does traumatize these kids. Mark, is there anything he can do?
Of course. Unfortunately, no, but I'll tell you this, I'm surprised that the people on the panel here think he should be ordered to pay.
You can't blame women for what they do wrong in the same way that you can't blame a dog for what it does wrong. It's your fault for not training it properly.
I never really did understand the traditionalist mentality. Now, these people mock feminists for thinking that the world owes them something simply for being female, and then, in their own actions, go about showing females that they are owed a pussy pass when they engage in sexual behavior that, by their own admission and by Gavin's own admission, would result in violence if the reverse case of a man sleeping with a 17-year-old girl took place. It's a classic case of how men uphold and perpetuate female hypoagency by reinforcing the fact that women should not be held responsible for the sexual decisions they make. McGinnis clearly states that he would want to high-five and celebrate the younger boy, older woman scenario, but would want to violently assault and choke the younger girl, older man scenario. And this again is why I argue that equal treatment under the law is so important, because it can be used as a tool to objectively weed out evolutionary bias, or at least sometimes it can. The attitude that McGinnis displays here is precisely why there is such a stark gender sentencing gap, because men and women like him, who happen to be in positions of legal authority, deem it appropriate to legislate their evolutionary bias into legal decisions. These people sling around buzzwords and smears such as identity politics, right? But they're nowhere to be found when boys are getting put in jail for sleeping with consenting teenage girls that are only a year or two younger than them, or when predatory middle-aged women get themselves impregnated by their own students and then collect child support from them afterward.
Well, what is a right-winger these days? Well, simply put, the difference between left-wing and right-wing guys is that the left-wing guy 100% panders to the opposite sex and verbally claim so. They claim total submission to the opposite sex publicly. A right-wing guy also panders 100% to the opposite sex. But the only difference is he has this veneer of self-respect. It's not real self-respect, it's a veneer. He wants to pander 100%, submit 100% to the opposite sex, while appearing that he has self-regard, that he isn't some doormat to have your feet wiped on. And given the choice, the average woman on the street prefers the left-wing pandering. They're getting everything they want from either the left or the right, but they do not want a right-wing man who even pretends to have self-respect. It's total submission, and understood total submission publicly. Now, frankly, I have no respect for the left or the right for obvious reasons. But I'd have to say the right-wingers, they might actually be lower than the left-wingers in that regard. Because by putting on this veneer of self-respect while having no self-respect, I think is even worse than just not having self-respect.
There's nothing more liberating and freeing to a woman than chauvinism. A woman has no responsibilities because I don't expect her to get anything right.